For a lot of you out there, you might already have a Speedmaster third member in your street car, performance car. This is the first one, actually two, that I've got my hands on. They were brought to me at the same time, and customer asked me to look them over and see what I thought about it, and also if there was anything I needed to do to it. Go ahead and do whatever I thought necessary to make this unit more durable and last longer as well. Like I say, it's Speedmaster. It's the first one that I've seen, and I changed a little bit about this one. I did a little bit of a pattern change, and I'll show you that here in just a few minutes. I wanted to show you the overall of the housing. Housing really looks pretty good. I like the material and what it looks like. The difference that you'll notice right off is it's 10 bolts in the front bearing retainer, and the normal front bearing retainer that I'm used to is a 5 bolt, not a 10 bolt, so the shims that I've got won't work. And then you'll notice it's got a nice looking billet front yoke on this thing with really large U-bolts that go through the front of this thing. So whatever U-bolt you need to get for it, you'll probably have to source that out aftermarket as well. But you'll notice, other than it's got the billet yoke, 10 bolts holding the front bearing retainer in, and it's also a through bolt. The bolts go all the way through the main cat, through the caps on the back of it, and then have nuts on the back side, except for one that's got the nut down inside the case. But definitely a heavy duty unit. And the one thing that I noticed about it when I got to looking at it was that the machining was just a little bit rougher than I normally am used to seeing, but it may be a design. They may have designed it this way. That I don't know. I don't know what they had in mind when they did this. Also noticed the machining on the cap. It looked like they did this with a roughened end mill, and they didn't either go to lengths to smooth it any more than it is. Like I say, it may be that they designed it this way for the looks. This one is a 3250 carrier bearing size, and you notice that the lock is on the side of this cap instead of being at the top of the cap. Not a problem that I see on that. It's just different location for that. Also noticed too that in the machining of this, machining looked pretty good, but as far as deburring or getting some of the rough edges off, I like to get my rough edges off a little bit better than this. Whether you use a die grinder or a deburring tool or something that you can get in and clean this thing up. But other than that, it's a real beefy case. And you'll notice also too that the locker unit is a helical gear type, which for street application is a really good unit. And I would assume that all of this gear is Speedmaster. I don't know for gospel if that be true or not, but the two gears that I have are both 389s, 389 ratio ring and pinions. One's a 35 spline, one's a 31 spline, and I'd caution you that if you are out and about and buy one of these from a friend or from a flea market or a vendor, that you be careful on what axle application to make sure that you get one that will fit your car without having to buy other axles or other components. But like I said, my first view of this unit, and I'm going to show you once we get to looking at this thing, the bolts in it look really good. I have to assume it is a Speedmaster ring and pinion. I know by the pattern on it, I wasn't too thrilled with the pattern, but that may be, this rear end may have been set up by somebody and they bought it in pieces. I don't know. And also too, it may be the deal to where it may be the ring and pinion, it may be the carrier itself and the machining on it. I don't know, and if I had time to sort it out, I could give you some more information on it. But once we look at the pattern, I want to show you the optimum pattern that I'm looking for, and then we'll talk about this a little bit more. But the optimum pattern that I'm looking for, this is the drive side of the tooth. This was a gear that I did not long ago, and that's what I'm looking for a pattern on the drive side. And then this will be the pattern that I'm looking for on the coast side. So you get an idea of what you're looking for and what you ultimately want to achieve in this. And we'll look a little bit more on what I've got for pattern and what this thing had when it was brought to me. And we'll take a look at that. But I'll give you a little bit more viewing of what I see here on the components. And this is just the bolts stuck in the front bearing retainer. They go through from the other side and hold this into the front of the case. It's just there to hold everything in place, and then you'll see the shims right there that are on the front of this thing. I had weighed this Speedmaster unit complete, and it weighed right about 66 pounds to give you an idea of the weight of this unit. And you can see the through bolts through the caps and how the nut goes on the back side. So works out pretty good. And I wanted to show you the pattern. This was the pattern that was when they brought me the gear. This is what the pattern showed, which I was not too thrilled about. You saw the pattern previous on what I was trying to achieve on another gear. I had gotten a pattern that I really did like. Excuse me. And this is this is the coast side, and it really doesn't show me what I really want on the coast side, because the pull is too close to the outside of the tooth. It is in the center, but it should go deeper into the root of the gear than this. And then this is the drive side, and it also is out too close to the edge of the gear. So I went ahead and changed shims, which the shims are a little bit hard to come by, because you've got to go to a Speedmaster source, whether it be Speedmaster, I think Jegs or Summit both carry these. But you can see what I ended up. This was the best of what I could get for a pattern on this one gear. I've not played with the other gear yet, but I've got this one the best of what I could do on it. And then this other one, I've got the pinion retainer out of it, and I'm getting ready to change shims in it. And I've got the pattern there is what it showed before I took it apart, and I'm going to change shims on it and see if I can get it closer to what I'm looking for. It showed about the same pattern. It actually might have been just a little bit better than the other gear, but it's still not what I desire of a pattern. And if I had time to, I would take the ring and pinion out of one of these gears and put it into a known good carrier that I've got in a steel, and a known good one, and see if the pattern was still what I considered a good pattern or a bad pattern, and it could kind of give me an idea, guide me in the direction of whether I think it's the carrier case or whether it's the ring and pinion on where the problem or why it doesn't give me what I'm trying to achieve here in a pattern. But anyway, this is the shims, and that's the shim that I'm normally used to, and that's the shim that you've got to have. So if you're going to do one of these and don't have shims, you'll have to order some shims. And also, too, that is the O-ring for the front bearing retainer, the seal, so it don't leak fluid once you put the retainer in. And I had, the unit had one in it, but the chamfer on the front of these things, I'm going to have to go in and re-chamfer these things, because both of these had cut the lip on the O-ring, which is not good, and it'll probably end up leaking. So I'm going to have to redo the chamfer on the front of this and try to get an O-ring in it without pulling any material. And this O-ring is a different thickness O-ring than the one that I have that comes for my Ford front bearing retainers, or a lot of the aftermarket, whether you get Strange or Mark Williams or whoever. So when you order shims, you'll need to get a couple of extra O-rings just in case yours may be like mine. I hope it's a problem. I hope it's an issue that they've corrected and got that squared away. But the regular O-ring that I have for my Ford units will not fit this Speedmaster, so I'm having to use the Speedmaster O-ring, and it is a different thickness material, and I've had to order those. So once I get them in, I can get this other unit back together, redo my chamfer. But other than that, the unit looks good. Like I say, some sharp edges that I need to go in, and if I were taking this thing all the way apart, I would deburr and clean up. But definitely a good looking unit. All I've got to do is get the unit that I've got together in the customer's car and try this thing. I've got pictures of it so that when we get it in and run it a little bit, we can tell if it's going to make noise or not, or if it's going to be a quiet gear. It's going into a car where you can pretty much hear what's going on in the rear end. So we'll have an idea, and then I can give you an update as to what I think these things are going to do and whether or not this pattern was acceptable or not. I kind of feel like it's going to be, but it may take a few miles to figure that out. But anyway, wanted to give you a look at the Speedmaster. It was my first look. Pretty interesting, and can't wait to try it out and see how it works out on the street. Thank you for watching the video.